We look to the future. In a very interesting book called Out of the Mountains, The Coming Age of the Urban Guerrilla, which is written by David Kilcullen. Just this year, it was released this year. Kilcullen says that there are 4 megatrends of the future. He says this is what will define the 21st century. Population growth, urbanization. This third word means cities, giant megacities are going to grow on the coast. And connectedness. This is what we're looking at in the 21st century, right? He says that the trends are clear. More people than ever before in history will be competing for scarcer and scarcer resources in poorly governed areas that lack adequate infrastructure, and these areas will be more and more closely connected to the global system so that local conflict will have a far wider effect. It is not a pretty picture that David Kilcullen paints of the 21st century. But I think it's fair to note that David Kilcullen is a counterinsurgency specialist and has spent his entire life traveling the globe fighting against movements, right? So he has a certain perspective on this. But Kilcullen isn't the only one that thinks these 4 things are what will define the 21st century, right? So part of what we have to think about as we begin to reformat our ideas of peace and we begin to reformat our ideas of justice is how do they interact with these things right here? How do we at Prescott College, right? And this is a conversation that we had this past Monday. And I think the point that my colleague, Dr. Sherman, made during that meeting is an important one, right? What does a liberal arts education look like in the 21st century? How do we begin to revamp the way that we're teaching about the world, the way that we're thinking about the world, right? Because things are changing. There is a level of connectedness in the world that we have never as a species experienced before, or even the idea of competing for these resources. So how do we begin to do that? Peace is not the absence of war. Peace is not justice. Peace is not freedom. Peace is indefinable, the way that we have set up the parameters of the conversation. I'm not saying that it's ever or always indefinable. I'm not saying you should go buy a gun or bullets to go with the gun, right? I'm not saying that we're doomed to die in some sort of raging conflict where we all have our hands at each other's throats. What I'm saying is that the conversation that we're trying to have about peace and about justice belongs to the 20th century. That we have to, right, as a body, as a group of people, we have to begin to think about how peace is not this, it's this, right? It's not a binary. It's not. It exists on a scale. We have a lot of peace. Do we have a lot of justice? Do those two things have to be that way? Can they exist together? I don't know. But I think it's a conversation that's worth having. I think it's a conversation that's worth having here.